Sit on my lap. Come on, Willie. You sit right here. Right here with me.
That's all right.
I'll keep you safe.
That's all right.
All right, how's everybody doing? Good, awesome. So we're gonna go ahead and start. I know people might still be getting some food, and please help yourselves throughout the program today, but we're gonna go ahead and start. And I'm not the first one to speak. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. McCall, our president, so you go right ahead.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. You here? Is this on? It is. Okay. On behalf of Maysville Community and Technical College, I'd like to sincerely thank each and every one of you for joining us as we continue our kickoff to National Library Week. Reading Renaissance was chosen with hopes of bringing more students to campus while still engaging our employees and community in a fun and creative manner. National Library Week has been celebrated for over 60 years, reminding us of the significant role that libraries play in America. While primarily they're there for research and academic purposes, the libraries at MCTC still do a good job at allowing our students to connect and express creativity and feel like part of our campus communities. So we're excited to see what this week unfolds for us as we celebrate the themed activities and the fun prizes. And so whether you take part in the dressing up of fun costumes and playing games and listening to readings and more, I know that it's going to be a great week. In Montgomery, we're especially excited about the projects that are ahead of us with a $1.2 million welding lab renovation launching this fall. This brand new community event space, non-credit grants that prepare students for emerging careers in cybersecurity and nuclear energy. We're seeing a lot of opportunities for community involvement just in the next few years. So our college has and will continue proudly serving the people of Montgomery, Bath, Powell, and Menifee counties with projects like these and events like the Reading Renaissance. So thank you to our library staff for your hard work and dedication in planning this event. I thoroughly enjoy seeing the involvement of the community when events like this are held. So please enjoy the day and week if you choose. And remember to thank your local libraries for their consistent dedication to the people that they serve. So thank you, and let the Reading Renaissance begin.
I made a scheduling error, that's all me, I'm sorry.
So I'm Melissa Smathers Barnes from the Montgomery County Public Library. Thank you all for doing this event. This is great. Anytime we have the opportunity to talk about books and reading and things that we can do in the community to enlighten ourselves, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Ray Bradbury said, "Without libraries, what have we? We have no past and we have no future." And here in Montgomery County, the public library has been in existence since 1871. So we definitely have that past covered, but we also look to the future. Over time, we have changed. We've had to back up and punt sometimes the different things that are coming up in the future or things that are new technologies or new abilities. And public libraries in particular have worked really hard to make sure that that access is available for the public and that we do move forward in the future. Here in Kentucky and across the nation, public libraries are seeing as much or more usage and reading of books than they ever have in history. In Kentucky, over 29 million items were checked out from Kentucky public libraries last year. In our library here in Montgomery County, 114,000 actual physical things you could touch were checked out from our library. But with that future and that technology that's moving forward, we had an additional 36,000 items that checked out as digital downloads. So that availability is there too. Some of the things that we offer at the public library that people don't think about, for students, we offer print jobs So you could do prints or copies or those kinds of things. I have information back at the table that you don't even have to be in the building to send your print job. You can send it to an email. We have a QR scan code you can send it to. Come through our drive-through and pick it up and not even have to walk in the building. So there are lots of those kinds of services, faxing and notaries and other things that people don't think about public libraries offer. And then, of course, the reading. So we do summer reading for children, activities and educational programs. We do summer reading for adults, and then we do reading programs throughout the year. We currently have 4 different book clubs that offer the opportunity to read books. We supply the books, so you don't even have to pay for those. And there's 3 in-person groups and 1 on Zoom group. So if you're interested in those kinds of things, you can join a group, talk about books. One of the groups does have a book every month, but they end up talking a lot about other books, as much as that book. So there's all kinds of things going on at the public library. I'm excited to see this opportunity. I'm excited. Stop by anytime and talk to us and see what kinds of things we offer. And happy Library Week.
And I also want to mention that the bookmobile is outside, so you don't even have to go to the library to go to the library today, although you should.
Good morning. I didn't realize the library had all those things. I'm really excited to hear that. So let's talk about libraries. Centuries before we had the world at our fingertips through computers and smartphones, libraries have stood as bastions of knowledge. For many, libraries served as the bridge between ignorance and progress. Now, my own earliest childhood memories revolve around books, and by extension, libraries. I have fond memories of my brother dragging me in a homemade cart behind his bicycle to the local library so I could check out a new stack of books, or visiting my aunt who worked at the New York Presbyterian Medical Library and marveling at the sheer size of all that knowledge. I credit much of my own success in life from that early exposure to the power of books, and libraries have always felt like treasure troves of anything I could possibly want to learn about or imagine. As technology marches forward, it is even more important to strengthen our bond with our libraries. As you just heard, they offer much more than books. They offer opportunities through many services that they offer. Libraries stand as champions of learning. Here at MCTC, we appreciate all the hard work that they do for our students, offering tutorials, research assistance, anything else that students could want to be successful. What a privilege it is to be able to celebrate their work here today and libraries around the world for a full week. And I'm happy to introduce the captain steering our ship. J. Kenneth William Stringer Vaught is the new Director of Library Services at Maysville Community and Technical College. Jay graduated with their Master's of Library Science and Certification in Instructional Communication from the University of Kentucky in May of 2025. At UK, Jay opened the Lesh Lending Library, Kentucky's first statewide special collections library committed to protecting and preserving banned and challenged materials. It's very important. Jay is proud to be a 2020 Berea College graduate as well. Their work has been published in Heartwood Literary Magazine and Queer Kentucky and performed at Arno Conference at Somerset Community College. Jay is also an adjunct theater instructor for us here at MCTC.
Like, do I clap for myself? Or?
Yes, every day.
Okay. Thank you. No, keep going. All right. Thank you, Derry. Now, I told Willie that I would read the bio that he prepared, which obviously is much better than mine. But before I do that, I'd like to say a few words about him from my heart and from his card. So many of you have heard me say this before, but for those who haven't, I truly have not met a person from Montgomery County who isn't kind, who isn't welcoming, and who doesn't have a good sense of humor. There must be something in the water here that makes people good-natured and funny, and I think you should bottle and sell it. And Mr. Mayor, that sounds like an initiative you'd like to start.
Absolutely, I like it.
Only answer 10%. So, of course, our guest of honor, Mr. Willie Carver Jr., is absolutely no exception. Okay. So I've been a fan since Gabe Holmes for Red States, since his time as Kentucky Teacher of the Year, and since my good friend Ricky from my Berea College days told me stories about her favorite teacher from Mount Sterling High School, Mr. Carver. While I was at the University of Kentucky opening Lesh Lending Library, which everyone in this room has access to use, I made it my mission to meet him, and you could even say I opened the library as an excuse for this purpose. But what is true is before even knowing me personally, Willie showed me kindness, generosity, and support. He agreed to be the keynote speaker at community commencement in Lexington, and he gave what I lovingly called the benediction at Eshlening Library's opening, and he read his beautiful poem about libraries. So in that same spirit, and to honor our first inaugural book banquet, I'd love to ask Willie if you might share this poem today.
First of all, thank you all so very much for showing up today. It really means a lot to get to see everybody, to celebrate libraries with you, to celebrate MCTC and everything that it's done. Thank you, MCTC, for bringing me. Thank you, Jay, for bringing me. I was proud to offer dual credit students while I was working in Montgomery County through the KCTCS system, and I know how important it is. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that my current job doesn't let me teach at other places as well, I'd probably still be working with the KCTCS system because I think it's so very important. I've seen why it matters. And I'll add about libraries. On top of everything else, and I have used that printing service so many times, I bought a printer and then lost the how to hook up the printer instructions. And then I said to ChatGPT, can you help me with this? I just need to hook up my printer. And it said, is there a local library? Like, it literally wasn't even gonna try because it knew nobody could hook up a printer. And I've been using that service ever since. So this poem is called Library. And before I read it, I'm thinking about how just last week, someone was telling me about a traumatic moment they had that ended with them being in a car with someone who wasn't safe and realizing they're in a city they don't know and they have no money and they don't know what to do. And the car came to a stop and they saw a library and they said libraries are safe. So they got out of the car. And I think that tells us a lot about the energy of the library. It's something that we all agree is important enough to keep open. It's the highest hope of an entire community. So, in that note, I would love to share this poem, Library. The first book I checked out at the library was about Chinese mythology. We couldn't check them out to take home until we passed primary grades. The broken cover was held together by blue tape, and inside its battered and bandage-wrapped wings, it concealed silky reproductions of wall plaster paintings from the time when Kuafu chased the sun and drank the Yellow River. For years, I worried about whether there were fish in it and prayed the fishermen in frightened bamboo boats escaped before being consumed by the thirsty giant. One time, the librarian gave everyone a free copy of a book to take home and keep as their own. It was about a gangly assistant pig keeper who left his job assisting pigs in order to save a bauble-wielding princess, to the background music of an enthusiastic tow-headed bard as he redeemed his name in an enchanted land. I used to imagine that similar magic to this still slept under the moss on our hillside and gathered itself in holy places in the dry patches of backyard behind our trailer. In only a few years' time, I was a white girl in the 50s whose anger kept her alive, a sister-in-law from Brooklyn who just wanted to be seen, a son of indigenous Americans proud of his mother's hominy, a black woman in Georgia who learned her power from other black women, a daughter of Chinese immigrants misunderstood by her mother. They sometimes say that books expand you and your mind, but they make me feel smaller, like my world beat its shallow boundaries outward with fists, wanting freedom, until it couldn't stop expanding at the speed of light in all directions. And I became a speck of sand on a vast and endless beach, and finally felt the power of the tide.
Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to read what you wrote, which is much better. All right, so Willie Carver Jr. is a public speaker, minoritized youth advocate, Kentucky Teacher of the Year, and the author of Gay Poems for Red States, a Stonewall American Library Association, Read Appalachia, Whippoorwill, Book Riot, and Global Pride award-winning collection about growing up queer in Appalachia. His fragmented novel, Tore All to Pieces, was published in spring 2026 by the University Press of Kentucky. Willie's work can be found in Southern Humanities, Good River Review, Gay and Lesbian Review Worldwide, Carver Review, and Appalachian Journal, among others. He has written chapters for Rural Education and Queer Identities, Trouble in Censorville, among others. His work can be found in various anthologies, including Testament and Discarded, and has been featured on MSNBC, NPR, and Good Morning America. Willie writes from Eastern Kentucky and believes everyone deserves to feel that they matter. So please, once again, let's give our guest a warm welcome. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. So we are gonna pretend these people don't exist, which is gonna be very hard because everybody looks really nice. And we are just gonna have a conversation, you and me, try our best anyway. And so, does that sound good?
That sounds perfect.
Okay.
Except for pretending these people don't exist.
Well,
I'll also say, I don't know who wrote that. I can't take credit for it because mine was not very good. Probably the press or somebody.
okay, well,
Yeah.
we'll give you credit anyway. So, Willie, I know it's cliche to say that you can't judge a book by its cover. Obviously, we know we all do. So could you actually just start by talking about Tore All to Pieces, about the cover?
Yeah. In fact, the cover to Tore All to Pieces begins with the cover to Gay Poems for Red States. So Zoe Norval actually won an award for this particular cover from the entirety of the small publishers, which includes every state publisher, which includes a lot. It's just if you're not the big five. So she actually won 4 Gay Poems for Red States, and it's a gorgeous cover. And when she and I got to talk about it, I realized just how many thoughtful decisions she made about how not to make the book about displaying poverty for the wrong reasons, how to hint at things. She was so very thoughtful. And she had actually made another cover that looked sort of like this one. Not the same girl, but at least the tear. And when we were thinking about Tore All to Pieces, I said to the press, I have an idea. What if we sort of played with this image? And she was nice enough to let us use it. And what's really interesting about the cover of Tore All to Pieces is it was entirely made at the University Press of Kentucky, based upon an idea from someone else. But that's not usual for a small press to do it. And this little girl kind of began the collection. Her name's Keisha. And I knew after I had written her story that this book would exist. And I knew as soon as I wrote it, she would be on the cover. So it was just bound to happen and bound to be tore up. And it is.
So speaking of Tore Up, so Tore All to Pieces, can you talk about how you landed on that title, your process for getting there?
My husband. So he's from Georgia, not from Eastern Kentucky, and so he's obsessed with language that people use. So the original title for Gay Poems for Red States is Truth Will Stand When the World's on Fire. And he was obsessed with how ubiquitous that phrase is, so it's still in the opening pages, in the front matter, because he's like somebody might say something profound and religious, and somebody will say, truth will stand when the world's on fire, like it's an amen. Or somebody would be like, she's up to no good. And people will still say, truth will stand when the world's on fire. Like, it really does. It doesn't just affirm what somebody says, but it takes those absolute frivolous parts of life and those really important things and merges them. It says those things that we think aren't important are important. They're just as holy. And Tore All to Pieces kind of works the same way. He had a colleague at Morehead State who was Tore All to Pieces about everything. But he was obsessed with it. He'd come home every day and say, here's 10 times that Kelsey was Tore All to Pieces today. Number one of her family members got a potentially scary diagnosis. Number two, they were out of LA at the Speedway. So I think one, I love the title for that reason, because it is so very Eastern Kentucky. But two, I think it works it speaks to the story itself. Because I wanted to write a book about people whose stories don't get told. And what occurred to me as I was writing it is you can't untell these stories, you can't untell these people. Some stories don't get told because people think they don't matter. Often it's the women in our lives whose stories get pushed to the side and not made history and not made into important moments. Often it's stories that people are uncomfortable telling, often our LGBTQ friends and neighbors. So, yeah, I was thinking about what unity means and what being Toro pieces means, and that generated a lot of thinking behind it.
We're going to talk about your use of language later, but I want to talk about how you structured your story. So if you haven't read it, you're going to be able to get a copy today from Coffee Tree Books, and Willie might be able to write a personalized message for you. And it's a wonderful book. I read it all on my porch, balcony. My husband's here, I don't know what you would call it, but I was outside. I was actually filming Professor Whitten while I was reading it. And so it's a wonderful story. I'm not calling it an easy read as into like because the language isn't great, but just because it's so encapsulating and it's so well written. And your structure of the story, it's different. It reminds me of George Saunders' Lincoln in the Bardo, which is half written through poetry and prose, half through like citations from historical documents, which sounds boring, but it's really not. Especially, it's about Abraham Lincoln. If you hear the things they were saying about Abraham Lincoln, like you would think like Twitter would be it's child's play. But anyway, so I would call it multi-genre, and I'm not an expert. I would just call it that. So fictional story that in it feel autobiographical, and you intertwine it with creative nonfiction. Can you tell us why you decided to write your first novel like this?
Yeah, the funny thing is, knowing what word to put on it is, I'm not contentious, but it requires lots of conversation. Because at various points, the University Press of Kentucky wrote novel on the front. And then we had to have many conversations about what that word promised, and is novel the right word? And we thought short story cycle, that's just too many words to spell and cover of anything. And then fragmented novel is another word that people tend to use for this sort of thing. But it also doesn't really encapsulate the poetry. What it is, the story of the genesis of this entire book. I was on vacation in Montreal, and interestingly enough, this was the day that Gay Poems for Red States was published. And there's a mountain in the middle of Montreal called Montréal, and this is like your kindergarten class gets to take a day to be outside and sort of walk. This is a Sunday school's going up the mountain kind of walk. Like, this is not a big hike. But about halfway up it, I get winded. And I have to sit on a bench. And I'm sitting there huffing, and these women who are easily 30 years older than me, smoking, wearing high heels, breeze past mid-conversation and keep going up the hill. And I had a memory of being a kid, riding bicycles up at a cow creek with my cousin. And we got winded and had to push our bikes. And this little girl looks at us and makes fun of us. It was so vivid that I had to write this poem about that moment. A little pastoral, slightly humorous poem. But when I get to the top of the mountain, this little girl who I knew in real life for 30 seconds maybe, I never saw her again, just kept buzzing, saying, "You gotta write my story now." So I did. And when I wrote it, I realized I can't, let's assume both of these are true. I didn't know this little girl, but let's assume this is her life. I can't pull her out of this story and put her into this poem. I can't pull her out of this poem and put her into this story. The lens that we use when we look at something determines what we get to see. And we are all the characters in somebody else's story. We are all stuck in stories. And so what I wanted to do was tell a bunch of different stories from a bunch of different perspectives. And characters from one story become the context for other stories. And there's a lot that I had to unpack as I was doing it, because I started to realize what my brain is wanting to tell is you can't take people out. There is no Appalachia without queer people. There is no community without the women who are holding it up. And we don't really see people. We see what they mean to the story we're telling ourselves about ourselves. And I think, so you have 10 stories, and the stories form a cohesive universe around a town called Mosley in eastern Kentucky. But each story is also paired with a poem, and the poems are almost entirely autobiographical. But what they want to do is add texture to remind you, even before you start reading, that you're looking at the story from a particular lens. And it was fun, honestly. It was fun to have, the narrators are all different. Some narrators are first person, some narrators are sort of third person distant. Some narrators are so close that the narrator's literal language had to be Appalachian, because I couldn't have a standard narrator telling that story. So yeah, it was really, it reminded me how important it is in real life when we're looking at people to think about the story we're telling. Because we often don't analyze those stories. And we're all telling stories about everybody all the time.
You do something really nice in the book. As a theater instructor, I really appreciate it. You have a dramatise personae, which is just a fancy way of saying a character sheet. And so I tell my theater students, like when you're reading a play or a performance, you always go back to the beginning and go back to the dramatise, so that way that will help you kind of understand, okay, who's this character, they're coming in. And you get that information about them even before reading the story. So I don't really have a question about that, I just like it. So I just wanted to say that's really cool. And then you also have a map, which I don't believe you drew, right? Was that? So can you tell us a little bit about why you wanted to put that kind of home place in there like that?
Yeah. So first of all, the map was drawn by Robert Guy, who I asked for a blurb. I adore Robert Guy. And he sent us a bunch of blurbs. But in just the body of the email, he was like, Willie, I just got to tell you, it's a good-ass storytelling. And then he had the blurbs, and we were like, we don't need the blurbs. He's just said good-ass storytelling. That's all we need. So that's what ended up on the cover. And so I had tried to make this work. I had tried to draw the map myself a million times. I was like, Robert, can you make this look right? And he did the thing that I'm clearly not smart enough to do, which is make east the top. But talk about a book that's trying to flip perspectives, like, it's just instinct for him to know how to do it. And this list of people, it just says people. One of the things, I wanted to do a couple of things. So a lot of these stories will let you know what happened to a character later, because the book spans in a lot of ways from 1953 to 2023. So I didn't want to tell the totality of their story, and I was stuck thinking, like, how do you capture a person without saying what happened or who they are? And then it occurred to me, like, this is how we talk in Eastern Kentucky anyway. Somebody in a review used the word gossip, and I thought about that, and I understand why they reach for that word, but that's not really how Eastern Kentucky works. It's about community placement. It's about knowing who somebody is in relation to other people. So I'll just read like a couple of these. Ashley, she's one of them Fox Creek slums, belongs to Clay's boy, I think. Or Caleb, that's Marvin's boy, the one that dated that drag queen from Battersburg. Or Doug, good old boy from over in Knott County, farms and fishes, I bet you met him. So it's useful, but not as useful as you want it to be, because really the town is the main character in this book, and the people have to be in relation to each other and to it to matter. So that's how it kind of gets set up. But I love the idea of somebody like coming across Jamie and then going and looking at this list of people and being like, how does this help me? But it does help you.
No, it does, and it reminds me of those, and I don't think you'll take offense to this, but I hope you know, the little Bubby Child memes. Is anyone familiar with those?
I love
my real rednecks in the crowd. No, it is, please look those up. I was going to say I'll pull them up, but I don't know what I'd find. But they are so funny, and that's literally how those are written, that kind of format where it's just like, you know, you might not understand what they're saying, but you know they're saying something, and you know what matters.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've had a conversation with a good friend about Little Bubby Child too, and she said, well, like, those make me uncomfortable. And it actually gets to the heart of a lot of what's happening in this book, so I hope this ain't one of your other questions. But she said, I don't know why people are laughing. That was her concern, because Little Bubby Child takes sort of authentic Eastern Kentucky moments and makes them humorous and loving at the same time. And she said, it makes me anxious because I don't know when people are laughing while they're laughing. And that is the problem when any person from a minoritized group has to write their story. We do not, we are stuck writing. I said we were tracking each other's stories. Every person from Eastern Kentucky is already stuck in a story about what the world says you are, about what it means when you set out to talk, right? And so I actually posted something on Facebook when I was writing this book, and I said, I could write a word-for-word transcript of my childhood, and some academic Appalachian from Asheville, North Carolina, would respond and say, this is problematic, it's a stereotype. And I'm like, yeah, that don't mean it ain't real. And so that's what happens. When I posted this, Mandy Sheffield, who's got a book called Nature of Pain, which is gorgeous, and it talks about a lot of different things, but part of what it talks about is her dealing with addiction and how addiction sort of happens in certain communities. And she immediately wrote me a message and said, I'm terrified to tell my own story because I'm terrified that people will say it's a stereotype, but what do I do? You know, my cousins have mullets and they were listening to Leonard Skinner. Do I have to clean them up? Because I don't think there's anything wrong with them. And so, yeah, I had that thought this entire time. I think a pitfall that some people fall into is thinking, I have to write it respectable. And then people will give us, then people will lend us some belief that we matter. And if they didn't already see that you were worthy and respectable, I don't think pretending to be like them is going to work. And I don't think that's just an Appalachian issue. I think pretty much every group that gets ostracized that has tried that learns you're not going to get respectability.
Yeah, Silas House, another author, says that Appalachia is just a microcosm of the United States, and I agree with that. And I think that can be said for most, regional areas. And I think what you're getting at, as an armchair comedian, I can never be a stand-up comedian because I like to sit. I'd like to be the first sit-down comedian. But I would say, in the grain, or at the core of every joke is a grain of truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to ask you about the truth of the novel, which is what you touched on, Appalachian identity. So, as a well, first of all, I want to say, starting with Gay Poems for Red States, I feel like your work belongs up there with Silas, Lee Smith, Barbara Kingsolver, Crystal Wilkinson, Brees DeJay Pancake. I could go on forever. But as a proud Appalachian, I can't tell you how fulfilling it is to read work like yours and hear and see people who sound like me, who think like me, who have some of my shared experiences. And you talked about this earlier. It's in your poem. About libraries, I would say that 1/3 of my teaching pedagogy or philosophy comes from Dr. Rudine Sims, Sims Bishop, she's the mother of multiculturalism, and she coined the theory that books are mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And so it's nice for me to see those othered individuals in books. So as a writer in Appalachian literary canon, where do you posit yourself? Do you think your work is, or do you think of your work as for Appalachians, about Appalachians, simply by an Appalachian, or a mix of any of those?
It's funny because when we have to have words to talk about identity, and then they immediately cage us in or imprison us in some way. And I'm always at this weird space because I feel like I'm often either talking to an Appalachian group or talking to an LGBTQ group. In really lucky moments, I get to talk to an LGBTQ Appalachian group. And that's, but it's funny how even the reception of things is different. For example, if I read a poem that's about a darker something that has humor in it to an Appalachian group, they always laugh. They always laugh at the sideways jab, at the funny thing or whatever. If I read, even if it's about an LGBTQ issue, whereas in LGBTQ spaces, I think people are much more hesitant to laugh. And I realize, like, even this book that feels like it's a contained thing actually means something different to these different groups that are reading it because of what they feel, what they bring to the table, the story they bring to the table, who they think they get to empathize with or not empathize with, their comfort level of empathy. So I think I'm writing for anybody who wants to pick up a book. I am not writing for non-Appalachians. I'll say it that way. So when I was writing these stories, I thought about the people who taught me courage, and the people who taught me kindness, and the people who taught me love. These were cooks at my grade school. These were cashiers at the dollar store. These were women I worked beside of at Speedway. So I wanted to tell their story, and I knew setting out to write it, there are going to be people who think these characters aren't worthy unless they do something worthy. And I'm like, she's working at Speedway 40 hours a week so that you can get what you need. She's already doing the thing that's worthy. So what I wanted to do was let things build recursively. I taught language for a long time. You don't teach someone the French word for hello by saying bonjour is hello, and now you know it, and that's how it works. Instead, you have them live through the moment of going bonjour about 500 times. And it's that repeating where they're associating that sound and that feel with someone's greeting you, that they suddenly have it fall into their brain in some real way. So you're not telling them the meaning, you're letting it build so that they can make it. And so the same thing had to happen here. So I want these same women to show you their dignity without having to perform it. And I thought if it happens enough, it's going to be like teaching a language. Somebody's eventually going to go, oh, these people matter. Oh, these people have stories that matter. And so, yeah, I'm writing as an Appalachian, and I'm writing stories that are Appalachian, and I'm careful not to write a story for someone who's outside of here to make it easier or understandable for them. A case in point, one of the stories in here is about a Sunday school teacher. And I sent it to a press as a single entity. It's not West, I don't remember if it's Colorado or Wyoming. But the feedback was, you should really work on characterization. This character appears to take herself very seriously as a person, but she says words like ain't and y'all. So is she serious or is she country? Or basically it was what they said. I don't think they even had the word Appalachian. But it's what the imposed binary was, she can't do both of these things at once. So I'm not writing for those people. I'm not going to have her not say ain't so that they can understand her character.
There is I would say, like, come as you are kind of mentality in this book. For me, that was the most important, I would say, theme that I picked up on. And my takeaway is that you shouldn't shrink yourself. We deserve to take up space figuratively and physically, and we should start by refusing to apologize. Am I somewhere in the right vicinity?
Absolutely. One of the characters I love the most here, her name is Rayanne, and she's a large woman who works at a gas station. And what's interesting is one of the first people to talk to me about the book said, he kept saying there's a celebration of fat bodies in this book. And I'm sort of hearing it, trying to take it in, because I'm like, is there? And I'm like, what's happening is there are so few unapologetic fat bodies just existing that even including them feels like a celebration. It feels like I'm saying, this body is the best body because we don't let them be. And I'm like, Rand's just fat, and she doesn't feel bad about it. And I don't need her to feel bad about it. And, often the way stories work is that if you're going to have a character who deals with a social issue that happens to be minoritized, they have to solve it. Like, oh, there's drug abuse in this story, so you need your character to get off the drugs. Or this character is fat, she needs to come to some realization. Even if the realization is like body positivity, and I'm like, I'm not going to have her talk about her fatness because she doesn't care. She does not wake up thinking about it. She wakes up feeling beautiful because she's beautiful, and she goes to work, and she turns down men. Sometimes she says yes, and she buys a pack of cigarettes and goes home, right? And that's enough. It doesn't have to. The unwritten rule is if you're going to have something complicated, you have to have the character deal with it. My characters who have addiction issues did not create the opioid epidemic. I am not forcing them to solve it. People who have, let's just say people who have extra weight did not create the conditions that cause obesity. They should not have to solve them. Someone else needs to solve them. So I just want to let them be.
Well, that's really interesting that you said that, because that is how I took it. I took it as a celebration, and now hearing you say, that wasn't even necessarily my intent. I think you're right. I think it has to do with the fact that I have, like, take the book Holes, right? And that is one of my favorite books. It was one of my favorite books as a kid, and I love the movie. Then they made casting choices in the movie. I could go on all day. We're not going to talk about this. But the point is, the point of Holes is that that kid starts out fat, and when I read that, I was like, oh, that's me. And then the whole point of that book is for him to lose weight. And so I do think that our entire existence, sometimes as larger people, or any kind of other group, is tied with an apology. So, for instance, I'm LGBTQ and Appalachian, which is something that you may or may not be able to know about me by looking. And by the way, I wrote this before I decided what outfit I was going to wear. So anyway, but however, I am plus size, and that is something visually recognizable, and that does tend to shoehorn me in the world. I love traveling, for instance, but I hate flying because there's no greater hell than flying on a plane as a fat person. Walking past everybody's row, and you could just tell that they're like, please God, don't let them sit by me. And like, it's humiliating. And so I do feel like in those moments that my existence is intertwined with an apology for it. When I fly, I'm praying for the family of 4, because there's nothing else on a plane that people hate worse more than a fussy baby. So I'm like, please let there be like a whole group of like 12 children that's crying, so I can have a reprieve.
See, I always hope that I'm sitting beside another fat person.
Me too,
We can just
yeah.
be fat together.
I'm like, oh, thank God, you get it.
But if it's a small flight, sometimes they'll like separate you. Not good for the flight to have 2 of you right there together.
Like there's a weight distribution joke
Yes.
there. So, can you talk about how your book, more than you already have, pushes back against how the fact that your identity should be intertwined with an apology for it?
One of the things that I think happens is, I consider myself a poet before writing this. But I took a fiction course with Crystal Wilkinson, and the rest is history. And I didn't realize the extent to which characters would feel like fully formed whole people. I think they're often made of other people in your life. So Ray Ann just showed up full force in my life. And I had one of my poems, Creek, featured in a production by Poems in Cincinnati. They're a group that does lots of theater and dance and hybrid forms of productions. So they had a production called Somewhere Over the Holler that looked at the queer Appalachian experience. And they used my audio book version of this poem, which was so cool. And when I was about to leave, I had been wearing like a tank top at home because I was in the backyard working. And I thought, oh, we're about to leave, I want to change. And I had never actually worn a tank top anywhere in public because I felt uncomfortable with my body. And there Ray Ann is standing in the room looking at me. As if she was there, and I promise I don't think I'm crazy. But she goes, why are you changing? Who are you changing for? And the way she kept saying changing, it was like becoming something else. And I was just like, listen, it's not political, I'm just putting on a shirt. But like I could feel this character judging me. This character who I created. So I was like, fine, I will wear a tank top out in public for the first time in my entire life. And the funny thing is, this production is so audience involved that at the end they invite people up and there's dancing. And someone takes a picture, a snapshot of me and my friend Laura dancing. And it is such a gorgeous, beautiful picture. And I thought, here I've been hiding my body for 40 years. And all I was hiding from was joy, right? Characters can do that by teaching you things. And I think the same way other people can. I grew up hating myself because I was trained to hate myself. And then I loved other men. And I loved other sissy men. And I loved other large men. And it started to occur to me, wait, they're lovable. I love them. That means I'm lovable. It took other people to teach me that. And I think I love these characters so much that my hope, I guess, subconsciously, is that other people will love them too and start to realize their worth. And maybe that's what feels like a celebration.
That's a beautiful story. I appreciate you sharing that. And I also hope that Rain is in the room with me next time I try to go out and check the mail in my Cookie Monster pajamas in my homecoming sweatshirt from 2014. So we're about 3 minutes away. So I would like to know if you would, we've talked a lot about your book so far. Can we hear directly from you and
Sure.
maybe a selection?
Yeah, I might even just go right over there.
Does that sound good to everyone? Yes.
Thank you. I have a knack for breaking these microphones. I think what I'll read is two things, or maybe three quick things. So I'll start with the poem that I wrote on the mountain map. This is called Sometimes I Miss These Hills. Sometimes I miss these hills. We all lived with my aunt. Just too many youngins, not enough doors, and that tiny white home propped up on the hillside. So the adults would force us out of the house, into the creeks, into the hills, into the sky, and anywhere else. They kept us away and kept us from talking over TV. Me and my cousin Jenny were the soft ones in that lot. Just old mountain talk to keep from calling us fat. We determined to ride bikes to the head of Cow Creek, rusted chains squeaking out the promise of freedom as we chased each other close by the grown-up chattering of the creek, tires bucking off the blacktop and running their thick rubber hands in the churchless mud eating up the road. We got halfway up the hill when the once cool sunlight felt dry, dense, thirsty. Our lugs complained and our legs turned to weeds, so we sat pushing the bikes towards the head of Cow Creek, imagining the ride back down, the free wind sweeping our faces like invisible sheets pulled fast by the hands of Jesus himself. A little ginger girl stood barefoot in front of a trailer painted bright green on one side and rusting over on the other. She stared at us, and from under heavy strokes of eyebrow that hated us from across the length of her emptying bottle of pop, she watched us as she licked the final drops. She threw the bottle to the ground, fast, fluid, perfunctory, like it was a hot box work break cigarette, like she was a divorced mother of two, though she couldn't have been older than 10. Them bikes work better, she said, when you sit on them. The ginger girl smiled teeth towards us, her hands slapping at her hip. She put out her discarded pop bottle cigarette with her bare feet. I looked ahead. Jenny did not. We climbed the hill, we rode back down. Eventually they turned the TV off and we were allowed to come in, eat our supper, take our baths, go to bed. Next morning, my cousin Jenny woke me up so we could climb Cow Creek once again. The ginger girl was no longer in her yard. Neither was that pop bottle. One of the windows on the part of the trailer that was painted green had been busted clean out, and pink curtains shuddered in the dewy truth of the early morning breeze. I pointed to the window. I looked at Jenny, who only looked ahead, and said, "Hey, let's ride them down the creek this time." I'm now going to move to the story. And in this moment, this girl, who is named Keisha, has spent the day outside because her mom has arrived back home high and gets into a fight with her boyfriend. And to save herself from the violence of it, Keisha has been trying to keep herself occupied outside. It was late in the afternoon and the air was warm and the ground soft under her bare feet. So Keisha decided she'd stay outside and away from the trailer, since her mommy and mud would be in moods the rest of the day. She spent the next few hours keeping herself occupied. She poked at some bugs under rocks until she killed them or they got away. Then she scratched pictures into the rocks with some gravel. A tomcat, which she could draw good because the art teacher made them practice drawing them last year, and beside him a big tree. She added a little baby bird's nest to the tree. She messed up trying to draw the baby birds, got mad, and then scratched out the whole scene. Next, she gathered some empty bottles, climbed up the hill a bit and picked some ferns, some weeds, and the last cheer flowers huddling around the little clumps near the pile of cement bricks left over from when Mud said he was going to build a hothouse. Some of the bricks was still flecked with paint when Mud said he was going to paint the trailer green, Keisha's favorite color. He ran out halfway and never bought more. The chiggers was already starting to fold in and turn brown, but they was still flowers. She stuck the ends of the plants into the bottles until she had little bouquets and then lined them up against the cement blocks. She figured they needed water and ran down to the creek. There was a slim wall of cattails on the far side, and she decided to pick some to add to the bouquets. She jumped across the narrow water and pulled at the first one she reached. It leaned forward like a dying man, falling face first into the creek. She laughed at the image and pulled another, then another, one at a time, watching them bow over and fall dead. Soon she forgot all about the bouquets waiting for her behind the trailer and was now making a game and bringing down the army of cattails one at a time. She'd just gotten behind them and kicked one over triumphantly towards the side of the creek facing the trailer when she seen Jamie's big truck pull up in the driveway. She stood on the far bank of the creek just looking. "Hey, Keisha Bug, what you doing down there?" Keisha didn't respond. "You mommy inside?" "Yeah, her and Mud's mad." "Well, baby, that's what they do." "Well, she called me over. What you doing?" "Just playing." "Well, come here." He waved in a big gesture and she crossed the road. He kept on talking from inside the truck as he leaned over the driver's seat to face her. "Here, take it. It's a peach knee-high, almost the same color as that mop on your head." He pulled out a bottle of neon orange pop, wiping water from a cooler off it with the inside of his shirt. "Come from over at the Fasting Field. This is an old-fashioned glass bottle just like they used to make. Got it special for you in Mosley when I seen it. So here, listen. I'm going to talk to your mommy and Mud and help them calm down, okay? You stay out here. You got me?" Keisha didn't respond. She was looking to the sky. The clouds was big and rolling so fast she could almost hear them, like a roar. Jamie waved his hands in front of her, his fingers spread out and moving so quick left and right that it was like he had 30 of them. The slim tattoo on his wrist became an electric bouquet of pink roses, flashing in and out of existence, falling to the left and then to the right at the same time. "Earth to Keisha Bug, this is the Vulcans. Can you hear me, child?" "Yeah, I've been staying outside anyway." Her voice was a croak. "Well, good girl. Just finish up that pop and then come on in. Now, drink it slow. Don't go get yourself sick." Jamie slid out of his truck into the trailer and Keisha stood alone holding the bottle of pop. She was looking into the sky trying to hear the clouds again, which now withheld their noise, when she heard the sound of talking. Kids talking. It was two fat kids from down near the mouth of the holler coming up the hill. A boy and a girl. Clean clothes. Boy with a new haircut. Rich kids. Probably kids who didn't have to stay outside while their not uncle gave their mommy and Mud whatever he gave them that she wasn't supposed to know about but knew about anyway. Probably kids who got to go to the park. Kids who Laney Carroll was allowed to play with. They had bicycles. But they wouldn't even ride them. They was just pushing them. Pushing damn bicycles when they was on the road and could have been flying fast. Pushing bicycles like they knew they would always have the chance. Like it was part of the rules wrote into their lives that there'd always be a bicycle. Always be a road. Rich asses. That's how the world was. Keisha wanted real bad to hate them and their bicycles. But they were kids, and they looked like they was about the same age as her, so she didn't want to miss an opportunity to play. She took a quick sip of peach knee-high and gave a holler to them. "Hey, and bikes work better when you sit on them." Keisha laughed hard at her own joke, grabbing at her hips to stop shaking. She hadn't spoken much the whole day, so the sound of her own voice coming out of her mouth surprised her. It didn't seem to surprise them, though. Them other two kids just stared. No response at all, like she was invisible and nothing, like she didn't even say nothing, let alone a good joke. She got mad, swigged the bottle fast, eyeing them both while the pop gushed down her throat. Carefully licked the extravagant stickiness off the mouth of a peach knee-high from all the way over in Mosley while they watched. Pop they didn't even have. Them too ornery to even ride their own bikes. And then she threw it to her feet with the last sweet swill still puddled in the bottom like there was 10 more. Where'd that come from? She become just eyes. The little girl with the bicycle stared back, probably mad she didn't have a pop. She had long black hair and a ribbon in it. A white ribbon tied up so high and neat that somebody else had to put it in for her. Her eyes was dark too, like her hair, and from across the road, Keisha thought her face almost looked like some kind of ugly bug. The boy didn't even bother to turn his head, just kept looking towards whatever was taking them up the road. But the girl, she saw right past everything. Through the pop bottle, through Keisha, through the trailer, maybe even all the way past the hill itself. The boy, Keisha could stand. A little boy that don't bother to see her is one thing, but the girl saw her and eyed her out of existence with some kind of meanness. Still, Keisha didn't look away neither. She wasn't no sissy. She just stared until the brown-haired fat girl had her filled. Then she turned and started pushing her bicycle up the holler. The boy followed beside her, and just as soon as they arrived, they was gone. Once again, it was just Keisha, the creek, the cattails, the gravel, and the clouds, like it had been all afternoon. She looked back up at the silent clouds. Swaths of vanilla and a deeper carnation yellow seeped across the backs of the trees on the furthest hill, heralding a sunset. She didn't give a shit what Mommy said, how Bud acted, what Jamie did or didn't do. She stormed into the trailer, slamming the door behind her. One more short poem so we don't end on something so harsh as a slamming door and a cuss word. This one's called Bathtub Faith. And it's always dedicated to my mom. And I wrote this poem in part because somebody said you couldn't have a serious poem with the word commode in it. Bathtub Faith. Mom gathered us like we were the godless crowd, like she bore the good news, like the sun was now shining and light made of new colors, and we convened a throng of three, crowding the public space between the commode and washing machine and that single white trailer as she kneeled before a beaming white bathtub transformed by cleaner and her work. I got out that old grime, scrubbed through soap scum, and just washed away them well-water iron stains. Don't it look brand new? Unwilling to dirty her tub with children's words, we simply stood in witness. Now, if you young'uns could just rinse around the rim with some new hot water and any old rag after you wash yourselves, it'll always look like this. The multitude took leave. The light grew faint. The sun twisted. Iron stains crept back. Grime cleaved unto the ceramic. Dirt and grot hovered and clung beneath our bathwater. Every month, a bathroom servant. The same faithful speaking in tongues. This time, we would feel the Spirit. This time, we would keep it clean. Y'all just got to do your part. And starting today and every day after, we're going to have a bright, clean tub. And I won't have to work so hard. We saw the miracle and believed, but we never once ran new hot water. Never once rinsed around the rim. Never once wiped with any old rag. And the sun set 10,000 times. I'm 40 in my own tub. I take a bath. I pull a plug. I watch water orbit its drain. I run new hot water over the same rag that made me clean. I anoint the rim and rinse the scum and the past with the rag, just like you always prayed we would.
Okay, so while everyone grabs some tissues, we're going to open this up for questions. So does anybody have a question for our speaker about anything you've heard or what you read? And if not, I'm going to ask Brianna.
You can please be directed to albox@gmail.com. Just one L. 2 T's.
You don't have to come up here, but if you'd like.